Welcome to Grace for Generations, a place where faith meets real life, where ancient truth speaks into modern battles, and where God restores strength not just for today, but for generations. If you have ever felt tired in your faith, confused by spiritual battles, or quietly asking God for strength while everything around you feels heavy, you are in the right place. Have you ever wondered why some people seem spiritually strong, yet their lives still carry storms? Not the kind of storms people talk about publicly, but the quiet ones. The ones that happen behind closed doors, the prayers whispered at night, the tears no one sees, the questions that echo in the silence after everyone else has gone to sleep. Because here is something most people never say out loud. Being spiritually strong does not mean life becomes easy. In fact, sometimes the opposite happens. Sometimes the stronger your spirit becomes, the more aware you are of battles that others cannot see. You notice the tension in rooms. You feel the weight of decisions. You sense when something in your life is trying to pull you away from peace. And the strange part is, many spiritually strong people feel weak more often than people realize. Not weak in faith, but tired in the journey. There are days when the prayer feels powerful, and there are days when it feels like the words barely leave your lips. There are days when hope feels close, and there are days when you wonder if God is working quietly in ways you cannot yet understand. If you have ever felt that tension, you're not alone. Across the world, millions of people carry faith inside them while navigating very real challenges. A mother raising children while holding on to hope. A young person trying to make wise choices in a world full of noise. Someone working long hours, carrying responsibilities, wondering if their life is moving in the right direction. Spiritual strength does not remove real life. It walks with you through it. And the truth is, the strongest faith often grows in the middle of ordinary struggles. There is a quiet story hidden in one of the ancient Psalms that captures this perfectly, not as a distant religious moment, but as a very human experience. Picture a man walking through a season where his world has suddenly become unstable. People around him have turned against him. His future feels uncertain. Voices around him are saying, "God will not help you now." Imagine hearing those words. Imagine the weight of doubt pressing against your heart while everything around you looks uncertain. Yet, instead of collapsing under that pressure, something inside him begins to rise. Not pride, not denial, but a quiet inner strength, almost like a voice deep inside saying, "I am not alone in this moment." It is in that moment that the psalm reveals something powerful, not in the language of performance, but in the language of trust. The writer describes God not as a distant observer, but as a shield. Think about that image for a moment. A shield does not remove the battlefield. A shield protects you while you walk through it. This is one of the biggest misunderstandings about spiritual strength. Many people think strong faith means you never feel shaken, but the deeper truth is this: spiritual strength means you know where to stand when everything around you begins to move. And this is where the story becomes deeply personal for many people listening today. Because maybe your battle is not dramatic. Maybe it looks like quiet pressure to succeed, pressure to keep everyone happy, pressure to carry responsibilities without breaking. Maybe you are navigating uncertainty about work, relationships, family, or your future. And on the outside, you appear calm, but inside, your heart is asking questions. God, are you still guiding me? Am I strong enough to keep going? Why does faith sometimes feel heavy instead of easy? These questions are not signs of weak faith. They are signs of honest faith. Even the ancient writers of Scripture wrestled with those moments. Yet, in the middle of that struggle, something remarkable happened. The writer begins to describe what it feels like to rest, even while life is uncertain. Imagine lying down at night while problems remain unsolved. Bills still exist. Conversations still need to happen. Decisions still wait for tomorrow. Yet, somehow, peace enters the room, not because every problem disappeared, but because trust has taken its place beside the problem. This is one of the hidden secrets of spiritual strength. It is not loud, it is not dramatic. Often, it is quiet. It is the ability to breathe when fear tries to rush your thoughts. It is the ability to pause before reacting. It is the ability to remember that your life is held by something greater than your current situation. And when people develop that kind of strength, something begins to shift in how they live. They stop reacting to every wave. They begin to anchor themselves deeper. Think about a tree growing near water. When storms come, the branches may move, but the roots hold steady. Spiritual strength works the same way. The outside of life may shake, but the inside remains rooted. And this strength does not come from pretending everything is fine. It comes from returning again and again to the presence of God. Some people discover it during prayer. Others find it in quiet moments of reflection. Some feel it while reading scripture and realizing they are not the first person to walk through difficulty. Generation after generation has walked this path. People who carried faith through uncertainty, through conflict, through moments when the future was not clear. And yet, their lives became testimonies of resilience, not perfect lives, but lives anchored in something deeper than circumstances. You might be in a moment like that right now, a moment where your faith is not being tested in theory, but in real life. Maybe patience is being stretched. Maybe forgiveness feels difficult. Maybe you are waiting for answers that seem slow to arrive. And if that is where you are, there is something important to understand. Spiritual strength is not built in comfort. It is built in the space between prayer and patience. It grows in the moments when you choose faith, even before the outcome appears. And slowly, something begins to happen inside your heart. Fear begins to lose its grip. Anxiety begins to loosen its hold. Hope begins to breathe again. You start to realize that strength is not something you manufacture. It is something God cultivates in you, like a quiet fire that continues burning, even when the night feels long. And when that realization settles into your spirit, you begin to see life differently. Challenges no longer define you. They refine you. Pressure no longer crushes you. It reveals the depth of your roots. And faith becomes less about proving something to others and more about walking honestly with God. But there is still a deeper part of this journey that many people overlook. Because spiritual strength is not only about surviving your battles, it is about discovering who you become through them. And in the next part of this story, something unexpected happens. The struggle that once felt overwhelming begins to transform into a source of authority. Not authority over people, but authority over fear, authority over doubt, authority over the voices that once tried to convince you that you would not make it. And when that moment arrives, your faith begins to move from survival into quiet victory. But that transformation does not happen automatically. There is a process that unfolds inside the heart, a process that many people are walking through right now without even realizing it. And understanding that process might completely change how you see your current season. There is a moment in every spiritual journey when a person realizes that strength is not something you're born with. It is something life slowly shapes inside you, not through comfort, but through experience. Think about the times when life did not go the way that you expected. The job opportunity that did not come through, the relationship that suddenly changed, the season when money felt tight, or when responsibilities became heavier than you imagined. In those moments, people often ask a quiet question inside their hearts. God, why is this happening? But sometimes the deeper question is not why. Sometimes the deeper question is, what is this season shaping inside me? Because spiritual strength grows in ways that are almost invisible at first. At the beginning, it feels like pressure. You wake up thinking about the same problem again. Your mind runs through possibilities. You replay conversations. You wonder if you made the right choices. And slowly, day by day, you begin to notice something interesting. You are still standing. You are still praying. You are still hoping. Even when circumstances have not changed yet, that quiet persistence is not weakness. It is strength forming. Across the world, some of the most spiritually strong people are not the loudest ones. They are the ones who continue showing up in faith, even when the road feels uncertain. They keep loving people. They keep doing what is right. They keep trusting that God is still present in the story. And over time, their faith becomes something deeper than emotion. It becomes character. The ancient writer of that psalm understood this because his life had been filled with moments where everything seemed to collapse around him. There were times when people misunderstood him, times when enemies surrounded him, when the future looked unclear. Yet something extraordinary happened during those seasons. Instead of allowing fear to control his thoughts, he began speaking truth into the middle of the storm, not loudly, but deliberately, almost like reminding his own heart who God is. He began describing God as the one who lifts his head. Imagine that picture for a moment. Someone walking through discouragement, their shoulders heavy, their thoughts weighed down by problems. Then suddenly, the realization comes. God has not abandoned me. God is still with me. And slowly, the head lifts again. Hope returns. Perspective returns. Courage returns. Many people watching right now may recognize that moment. The moment when you realize that even though life is difficult, something inside you refuses to give up. You still believe tomorrow can be better. You still believe God can guide your steps. That belief is the beginning of inner authority. Because the world often tries to teach us that strength comes from control your environment, control your outcomes, control how others respond to you. But spiritual strength works differently. It grows when you release control and trust God with what you cannot carry alone. And when a person begins living that way, their entire perspective shifts. Problems no longer feel like permanent walls. They become temporary chapters. Delays no longer feel like failure. They become moments of preparation. Even fear begins to lose its power, because when you know that God is walking with you, fear can no longer define the future. There is another quiet moment in that ancient psalm that reveals something powerful. After describing danger and uncertainty, the writer suddenly speaks about sleep. Not the restless sleep of anxiety, but peaceful rest. He describes lying down and waking again because God sustained him. Think about that. The battle was still present, yet peace entered the night. And that is something many people are searching for today. Peace in the middle of pressure. Peace while responsibilities pile up. Peace when the news of the world feels heavy. Peace when the future is not fully clear. The truth is, spiritual strength often shows itself most clearly in moments like that. When your mind chooses trust instead of panic. When your heart chooses hope instead of despair. When your soul remembers that God is still guiding your story. And when that kind of trust begins to grow, something inside you changes. You begin to walk through life differently. You become slower to react to negativity. You become wiser in your decisions. You become more patient with people, not because you suddenly have an easy life, but because your foundation has changed. And when that foundation becomes strong, even difficult seasons begin to reveal hidden blessings. Sometimes challenges teach you compassion. Sometimes delays teach you wisdom. Sometimes waiting seasons teach you patience that will serve you for the rest of your life. And sometimes the very battle you are facing right now becomes the story that later strengthens someone else. Imagine that for a moment. The struggle that feels heavy today becoming the testimony that encourages another person tomorrow. That is how spiritual strength spreads across generations. One life learning trust, then sharing that trust with others. A parent teaching a child resilience. A friend encouraging another friend. A community lifting each other during difficult seasons. And suddenly, what once felt like an individual struggle becomes a source of light for many people. This is why spiritual strength is not only personal, it is generational. Every time someone chooses faith instead of fear, the impact moves further than they realize. Children watch. Friends observe. Communities feel the ripple effect. But there is still a turning point that happens inside the heart of every spiritually strong person. A moment when faith moves from quiet endurance into active declaration. Because there comes a time when simply surviving the storm is not enough. Your spirit begins to rise. Your voice begins to speak again. Your faith begins to declare truth over your life, not as a performance, but as a conviction. You begin saying things like, I will not allow fear to control my decisions. I trust that God is guiding my steps. I believe this season will produce something good. Those declarations may seem small at first, but they carry tremendous power because words shape the direction of the heart. And when those words align with faith, they begin reshaping how you see your life. The same person who once felt overwhelmed begins walking with quiet authority. The same heart that once doubted begins speaking hope again. The same mind that once felt trapped in worry begins imagining new possibilities. This is the transformation many people experience when spiritual strength matures. They no longer define themselves by their struggles. They define themselves by the God who walks with them through those struggles. And when that realization settles deeply inside a person, something remarkable begins to happen. Prayer becomes more than a ritual. It becomes a moment of real connection A moment where burdens are released, where strength is renewed, where declarations of faith begin to rise again. And when that moment arrives, the journey moves into its most powerful phase. The turning point, the moment where faith stops being quiet endurance and becomes a voice that speaks life into the future. In the final part of this journey, that voice begins to rise through prayer and declaration. And the same person who once asked, "Am I strong enough to continue?" will begin to say something entirely different. They will begin to say, "God has been carrying me all along," and realizing that truth changes everything. There comes a moment in the journey of faith when everything inside you pauses, not because the battle suddenly disappeared, but because something deeper than the battle begins to rise inside of your spirit. It is the moment when you realize that the strength you have been searching for has actually been growing quietly inside you all along. Many people reach this moment without even noticing it at first. They think they are still the same person who once felt overwhelmed. But when they look closely, something has changed. The fear that once dominated their thoughts is not as loud anymore. The pressure that once felt unbearable now feels manageable. The uncertainty that once kept them awake at night no longer controls their peace. And suddenly, they realize something important. God has been carrying them through every step of the journey, even the steps they thought they were walking alone. This is the turning point where faith moves from quiet endurance into spiritual authority. Not authority over other people, but authority over the voices that once tried to control your heart. The voice that said you would never overcome this season. The voice that said your prayers were not making a difference. The voice that whispered that your future would always look like your current struggle. When spiritual strength matures, those voices begin to lose their power, and something else begins to rise in their place. Faith, not the kind that pretends everything is perfect, but the kind that looks at reality and still chooses hope. This is the moment when prayer becomes more than words. Prayer becomes a turning point. Across the world, people pray for many reasons. Some pray when they feel desperate. Some pray when they are grateful. Some pray simply because they long to feel close to God again. But spiritually strong people eventually discover something powerful about prayer is not only about asking God to change situations. Prayer is about allowing God to change the atmosphere inside your heart, because the greatest battles are often not around us. They are within us. Fear, doubt, discouragement, comparison. These are the quiet battles that many people face every day. And the moment prayer enters those battles, something begins to shift. Imagine sitting quietly for a moment, breathing slowly, allowing your mind to become still, then speaking honestly to God about the things weighing on your heart. No performance, no complicated language, just honesty. God, you see what I'm walking through. God, you understand what I'm carrying. God, give me strength for this season. In that moment, prayer becomes more than words. It becomes surrender. And surrender creates space for God to renew your strength. So, wherever you are listening right now, take a moment to let your heart become quiet. If you have been carrying worry, place it in God's hands. If you have been feeling uncertain about your future, allow His peace to enter that space. If you have been fighting battles that no one else understands, remember that God sees every detail of your journey. Let us pray. God of wisdom and mercy, you see every person listening right now. You see the challenges they are navigating. You see the questions in their hearts and the responsibilities on their shoulders. Some are walking through seasons of uncertainty. Some are carrying silent burdens. Some are searching for direction. But today we remember something powerful. You are still present in every story. You are the one who lifts our heads when life tries to push us down. You are the one who renews strength when our energy feels exhausted. You are the one who reminds us that our lives are not random. They are guided. So today we release every fear into your hands, every worry about tomorrow, memory of yesterday that still tries to weigh us down. We ask you to fill our hearts with courage. Teach us to trust you in the moments when answers feel slow. Help us walk through challenges with wisdom. Help us speak with kindness even when situations are difficult. Help us remain steady when the world around us feels unstable. Let your peace guard our minds tonight. Let your presence guide our decisions tomorrow. And remind us that strength is not something we create on our own. Strength flows from walking with you. Now take a moment and declare these truths over your life. Speak them quietly, or even just in your heart. I am not walking through life alone. God is guiding my steps. My challenges will not define my future. Strength is rising inside me. I will walk forward with courage. Declarations like these may feel simple, but over time, they reshape how you see your life. Instead of seeing obstacles, you begin seeing opportunities for growth. Instead of seeing delay, you begin seeing preparation. Instead of seeing uncertainty, you begin seeing possibility. And when that shift happens, your entire perspective changes. You begin to understand that spiritual strength is not about avoiding storms. It is about learning how to walk through them with faith. And one day, you will look back at the season you are walking through right now, the season that once felt heavy, the season that once filled your mind with questions, and you will realize something remarkable. This season was not destroying you. It was strengthening you. It was shaping the kind of faith that cannot easily be shaken, the kind of faith that continues believing, even when answers take time, the kind of faith that brings peace into rooms where anxiety once lived. And the beautiful part of this journey is that it does not end here, because every season of spiritual strength prepares you for something greater ahead. Greater wisdom, greater compassion, greater ability to help others who are walking through similar battles. The strength God builds inside you today may one day become the encouragement someone else desperately needs. That is how faith spreads, one life strengthened, becoming a light for another. And if this message found you at the exact moment you needed it, perhaps that is not an accident. Perhaps this is the season where your inner strength is rising in ways you cannot yet fully see. Perhaps this is the moment where your story begins shifting from quiet survival into quiet victory. So tonight, as you move forward with your life, carry this question gently in your heart. What if the challenges you are facing right now are not the end of your story, but the beginning of the strength God is building within you? And what might your life look like if you trusted that strength more than your fear?